I'm with Kimball, Tyree, and St. John. We are predominantly an eviction firm, but we provide all services for landlords. Mary emailed me last week, basically asking me to confirm that the brochure that we used 4 or 5 months ago can be used today as well. And typically that would be correct. A lot of the professionals that are speaking here, there's not a lot of changes that are happening in their industry. But for us landlord tenant attorneys and for landlords and property managers, every 3 or 4 months, it's like a lifetime of new laws. So if we use the same brochure as 4 or 5 months ago, I would be giving you bad laws. A lot of them are obsolete and have been renewed, changed, not to your benefit. So I'm gonna touch on a few of those laws. The goal is not to go into every little detail and aspect of the law, but just to give you the bird's eye view of some of the new regulation that everyone needs to face with. Before I jump into that, I just want to bring two recent or relevant issues that we all need to be aware of. Number one, if anybody here has property in LA County, does anyone here have property in LA County? Okay, so there's price gouging laws currently in place. And since COVID, the local legislators basically are very quick on the trigger to uh, to impose emergency orders. It started in COVID, which everybody understood, but now 2 days of rain and the governor announces an emergency order, or 3 days of ice raids, and now there's an emergency order in place. Currently, there's still an emergency order in place. The justification is the fires that happened in January 2025 in the Palisades, plus additional, like I said, the 2 or 3 days of heavy rains. And the price gouging law, that when an emergency order is in place, price gouging laws are triggered. So even if your property is not subject to rent control, you cannot increase rent by more than 10% per year. And that also applies to vacancy decontrol. So if you have tenants who vacate, even if they live there for a long time and they're well below market, you cannot adjust the rental rate to market, even if it's way below market. So you cannot increase the rent for the new tenant by more than 10%. That's number one. Number two, just does anybody here have properties in LA City? Yes. So just so you know what happened 2 days ago, city council, who are not very landlord friendly, held a closed session, and in that closed session, they committed legal robbery. What they did is they allocated $180 million towards eviction defense. They allocated $180 million to three specific law firms that I consider to be extortionists. In evictions, they are the first law firms to heavily litigate simple cases just to increase the landlord fees, to make it unbearable on the landlords, and then to come up and say, oh, we want to settle, give us another 6 months to live there rent free and pay us for the pleasure. And that's what our city council did in LA City. I'm bringing this up because as a landlord attorney that receives calls a lot during the day, I hear a lot of landlords complain. And I don't hear a lot of landlords that complain, but also do something about it. So I encourage everybody here to participate in local politics. And that means to show up to city council meetings. The photo that you saw that Mary presented on the screen at the beginning with the landlords holding the yellow signs, I took that photo. And our firm, in collaboration with AGLA and another organization named Vibrant LA, we facilitated and collaborated with many landlords to show up and to take over the room. And just to articulate our success, The proposal back then was to change rent control to allow for any rent increase between 0% to 3%, depending on the calculation. The rent increase can never increase 3%, and it can go down as little as 0%. But because of our advocacy, we were able to change that from 0 to 3 to 1% floor and 4% cap. And it may not seem significant when you look at it from the abstract, but at the end of the day, if we have around 600,000 units subject to LARSO in LA City, and instead of increasing it by either 0, you increase it by 1%, or by increasing it 3, you increase it to 4%, that's millions of dollars that landlords are recovering, and that's because of our efforts. So, with that said, please, one of the most important things that I can say here today is that we ask that you help, that you participate, that you contribute money towards these efforts. I don't know how relevant this will be to everybody, but there's a new state law, AB 1414, basically allowing tenants to opt out of certain services that landlords package with tenancies. It can be internet services, cable services. Just know that now it's regulated. If a tenant asks to opt out, you must allow them to opt out. The next new law relates to habitability. Does anybody here sell ovens or refrigerators? 'Cause they're making a lot of money, more than everybody in this room. Now every unit needs to, any residential unit other than single room occupancies and some very limited exceptions, the landlord must provide a refrigerator and oven. And if you don't, or if it's not operable, the unit will be deemed inhabitable as a matter of law. There's a lot of nuances to this. Like I said, I don't think that in this forum or in this context I should go into the nitty-gritty of things. But at the end of the day, you need to provide those two items, and it's regulated. So if there's anybody here that's not providing it and you need help with that, you can contact us. SB 610 is another state law, and that was passed because of the recent disasters that we've experienced. What triggered this, I think, was in January 2025, the Palisade fires. It basically says if there's an emergency, if tenants were evacuated because of an emergency and the property suffered damages, the landlord is basically responsible for everything. I don't know why they passed this, because before that you were still responsible for everything anyways. I guess they wanted to add penalties, like they like to do against landlords, but that's the gist of it. And by the way, everything that I'm talking about here has more detail in the pamphlets or the booklets that Mary and Shant prepared for you, and there's even more than what we're discussing here. SB 655. Anybody here in the air conditioning business? You may want to invest in some air conditioning companies and stocks, because it's coming. The bottom line is that soon enough, units are going to need to have air conditioning as well, and the high and low temperatures are going to be regulated. It's not in place yet, but I think that they expect it to be by January 2027. So the legislator basically is looking for recommendations and proposed drafts for this. So yeah, that's going to be something to think about if you buy properties without air conditioning, or how good the units are cooled. Residential evictions. Anybody here loves evictions? Yeah. Anybody here filed an eviction before? Okay. I see a lot of victims. Okay, AB 246, Social Security eviction protections. So if a tenant doesn't pay rent and they notify you that it's because their Social Security payment was delayed for whatever reason, guess what? You can't evict them. You need to keep on providing them with housing services. And if you do anything to circumvent that, you'll get sued. And we don't like that. So just pay attention to that if any tenant ever tells you that it's because of their Social Security benefits. Guess what? If 6 months pass and they still don't pay, and you try to file an eviction, the $180 million that City Council just gave those extortionists are going to be used for that. Security deposits. Last time when I was here, we spoke about new security deposit laws, which basically requires landlords to document via photos the starting condition of the unit prior to the tenant taking possession, the condition of the unit right before the tenant vacates, and then the condition of the unit after the tenant vacates and the landlord makes the repairs. So it's 3 sets of photos and videos that you must not only maintain in your records, um, but also send it to the tenants. That was our last seminar. A seminar before that was when the law said you're not allowed to charge more than 1 month security deposit, right? So now there's another law. And the reason why I'm giving you this little history is because it looks to me and to people in the industry that the legislator is trying to discourage landlords from even taking security deposits because it's becoming a burden. Not only that it takes you time to rent a place and you give discounts and you say, oh, we'll give you 75% less on the security deposit. Even that is so highly regulated that it may be a burden, an administrative burden on the landlord to keep security deposits. Not to mention the fact that a lot of landlords don't, in LA City rent control, don't pay security deposit interest to tenants, which is required, and then they use it as a defense against evictions because there's a catch-all provision in the rent stabilization ordinance that says any violation of the ordinance is a defense to an unlawful detainer. So I'm not exaggerating. We have a lot of cases where the notice demands 20, 30, $40,000 in unpaid rent, or even 10,000 or $5,000 in unpaid rent, and then we need to dismiss the case because the extortionist landlord say, oh, you didn't pay our tenant $25 in a security deposit interest, so now you need to dismiss the case, pay them the $25, and start over. The new law relating to security deposit that we'll go over today is basically saying, how do you return the actual money? If there's any money left on the security deposit, how do you return it? And this new law, AB 414, basically says if a tenant paid rent or the security deposit electronically, you must offer them the option to receive the security deposit funds electronically as well, unless it's written in the lease that the security deposit is going to be returned via check or money order or otherwise. The second part of this law is how to handle security deposits when there are multiple adult occupants. So the starting point is that you send them a check and you list all the names of the tenants on one check. Now they're saying the tenants can agree to split it in a certain amount or a certain percentage, plus tell you, wire $200 here, $400 there. They have the right to do that unless you wrote in the lease agreement exactly how to return it. So unless you guys are okay with playing around with electronic funds, I recommend putting in your lease agreement, how the security deposit will be returned, because then you don't need to follow this law. Okay, service and court procedures starting January 1st, 2027. This is not a big deal, but it's still more burden on the landlords. When you serve a simple notice to pay rent or quit, starting January 2027, you'll need to take photos of the notice posted with a stamp showing the location, the date, and the time. That's for notices to pay rent or quit. And when we serve the summons and complaint, the process server, the registered process server, will need to do the same when they serve the lawsuit.